Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for episode 16 of Just Take 3 with me, Andrew Musgrove, and
Me, NORD VPN's very own Sam Mulliner.
there we go. I'm not even going to have to push the subscription to NORD VPN in this episode. Thank you for sponsoring us, NORD VPN, because Sam's just done it. The very best VPN out there to protect you from the hackers and scammers. Get signed up. All the details in that podcast description box. And plenty of you guys have taken advantage of this wonderful offer and you are helping support our podcast, which is much appreciated. Sam, lovely to see your face. How are we getting on? You well?
Good. Yeah, good form. Bit frustrated because it's the international break and it was... I suppose it may have come for us at a good time, feel good factor and all that, but yeah, I want more. I want more. I had 2 really good wins, 3 really good wins if you count the cup game as well. See what I did there last week, saying we'd definitely lose against Forest. Not a moment's doubt, was there? All jokes aside, I fancied us at the weekend, and yeah, glad to be proved right. And it was them 2 wins now where you can really say, yeah, do you know what? We deserved them. We played well, got the win, and it was thoroughly deserved.
Yeah, well, as you're one for making predictions, this episode will be coming out to you guys on Sunday morning. So by that time, England will have played Greece because it's happening tonight at the time of recording. We think Lewis Hall will get an England cap. How are
I
England
think
going
he's
to
going
do?
to start
I do.
because who else is there?
There isn't anyone. Yeah, precisely.
I hope Tino gets one as well, because obviously he called up late again because of the mass withdrawals, and he's been in this will be the 3rd squad in a row now he's actually been a part of, and I hope he gets on. I hope he gets on because he hasn't yet to get his cap. So I hope we see both of our young wing backs this evening as we record against Greece. We'll get a good look at our most expensive goalkeeper in the club's history once again, Vlachodimos. Yeah, what bizarre situation that is. But yeah, I think I'm quietly confident Lewis Hall will start and put a good show in.
Yeah, me too. And I think England will win, although Greece have been going good of late. They're quite a bit of a test, aren't they, Greece? So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, 20 years ago, they were kings of Europe.
I mean, I say they've been going well. I'm sure. Who did they beat recently? Did they beat
England.
Is that who they beat? I know they beat England. And
Yeah, at Wembley. So that's nothing to be sniffed at. I mean,
yeah, it
all
was
jokes
that. Because I
aside about...
remember I was driving back and I was listening to it, and it was the first time Greece had beaten a team in the top 10 in 20 years or something.
Yeah, since they won the Euros.
So maybe they haven't been going well at all. Maybe I've just totally made that up.
Well,
That shows you
either
how much
way,
I know about English
you know,
football.
they deserved that win at Wembley, and it was, it's no mean feat to come over there and beat England. I mean, all jokes aside about Southgate and records in tournaments or whatever, but England are very strong in those kind of flimsy games.
Yeah. I mean, this is a tabletop clash, isn't it? Greece first, England second, and actually Greece have won 4 in 4 badly. But yeah, fingers crossed by the time this comes to you guys, England will have beaten Greece. Anthony Gordon, Tino Livramento, and Lewis Hall all would have featured and had an absolute belter of a game. And
not get injured.
Yes, you've stole me thunder. That's exactly what I was going to say to you.
That's the only thing that's important to us, isn't it? It'd be great if they get on, great if they play well. If England win, fine, whatever. Just as long as they don't get injured. I was very surprised Gordon didn't pull out of the England squad, but listening to his presser, Wednesday night, just tremendous attitude and wants to play for England, wants to play for Newcastle, wants to do it all. So it was a bit of a heart-stopping moment when he came off injured against Forest, but he's obviously none the worse for wear.
Yep. And he said in that press conference, I was going to come here and get assessed and see how I was and take it from there, which is a great attitude. He wasn't going to risk himself if he wasn't fit, but he is fit. He will have played against Greece on Thursday and hopefully on the score sheet. Episode 16 then of Just Take 3. The premise is very simple. Me and Sam have crash landed on separate desert islands, and we somehow have the ability to watch Newcastle United highlights of certain moments, certain players, certain goals, certain games, certain whatever categories to do with Newcastle United. We've covered about it all, really, haven't we, in the last 15 weeks, now 16 episodes. But this one is another one which will create a little bit of debate. I think the answers will probably depend on what era you are from and what, your favorite era and what you grew up watching in terms of Newcastle United. But we have chosen left backs, topical, because Lewis Hall is doing so well and he is the man everyone is talking about, following that England call-up and following a man of the match performance against Greece as well. Left backs. I mean, it's one of those, isn't it, Sam, where you think about it, and it's another position that maybe doesn't get that much attention because it's not a flashy position. It's also a position which you could argue until now with Lewis Hall, and things could tail off. I hope they don't, but they could do. So let's not hype them up too much. They haven't really had a proper left back in a long while. I know that David Santon, but really when you're talking about a consistent performer at left back, I mean, you've got to go back to maybe Olivier Bernard, potentially is one you would shout.
Very, very harsh on Paul Dummett.
Is it?
Yeah.
And I mean, okay. I mean, that's your opinion.
In his early years when he's breaking through, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, look, I mean, it doesn't help as well that we played with 5 at the back for quite a number of years during all of that. So it was, it was a Matt Ritchie wing back job for quite a few years, and but certainly in recent history, there's not that many really, really quality ones. I take your point with that.
Yeah, I was just looking here at Paul Dummett's stats. Played 191 times at left back for Newcastle.
Good luck at Wigan, Paul, if you're watching.
Yeah. I mean, look, no doubt in his effort, tremendous effort. And he actually, I think, towards the end of it, looked a lot better at centre back, didn't he, when he got those
100%.
opportunities? But look, and like I say, that's just my opinion. I never really looked at Paul as a kind of a star left back. I always felt Newcastle United, if they could, would get someone in who would be the next level up on Paul Dummett. Again, no disrespect to him. So that's why I've gone all the way back to Olivier Bernard as a case in point about the last time they had a real out-and-out tremendous left back, in my opinion.
Yeah, it depends what you want from your left back, though, isn't it? Do you want someone who will bomb forward and act as like an extra left mid, or do you want someone that's defensively solid?
But I mean, Dummett was that eventually, but I remember there were times early on where he was very vulnerable and he didn't look comfortable playing at left back for Newcastle. And then, it was a learning curve. And then he finally found his feet and he came into his own. Probably a little bit later than he had wanted, because then by that time you had competition and then it was eventually moved into left centre back. But I was a big critic of Paul Dummett very early on, probably in the Pardew year off the top of my head.
When he just broke through.
Yeah, I didn't think he looked quite right, but to be fair to him, he got there in the end, and tremendous servant for Newcastle. And who doesn't love a Paul Dummett sliding challenge?
Exactly. I always remember he was. It was a performance of his that will probably be forgotten, because Joe Linton's first Newcastle goal took the headlines that day at Spurs when we beat them 1-0. Paul Dummett was sensational that day. Absolutely sensational. Nothing was getting through him. So he had his moments. He was Mr. Consistent. I preferred him at centre back towards the end, but he's an all-round good egg.
I think last season he played against Man City in the League Cup and he had an absolute belter game. And then we didn't see him for forever.
Grafton Dummett at the back.
Yeah, one of his best performances, and sadly one of his last performances as well. But it was a tremendous way to go out in many ways. But yeah, we'll start with. I'll go first. I'm going to go first this week. Okay, I can't remember who went first last week, but screw it. I'm going first this week. I've gone for John Beresford. Played for Newcastle United between 1992 and 1998. 179 appearances, joined from Portsmouth. He very nearly went to Liverpool, but failed his medical. Kevin Keegan caught wind of this and got straight on the phone to him and said, come up to Newcastle United. He explained that he just failed his medical at Liverpool. And Keegan said, we can find a way around that. And joined Newcastle. I was there for 6 years and then made a host of appearances in the Champions League. Was a major part of the entertainers era. Scored in the Champions League, was in the team against Barcelona, was in the team against Manchester United in that 5-0 win. I just thought it was a joy to watch. And we spoke about John before, Sam, away from the cameras, and you said, you weren't all that impressed with him. But I think he was a bit like Darren Peacock in many ways. His attributes and what he did in that team are largely forgotten because it was all about what was in front of them. And when Newcastle went on the attack, it was often just those two at the back praying and hoping that the other team don't come on the counter because there's no one else to help defend the goal. And when you've got players like Ginola in front of you and you're having to work really hard to supplement his attacking play and make up for his lack of defensive play, that maybe doesn't get the headlines if Ginola's gone up and scored a worldie sort of thing. So I think his time, if it's not looked upon fondly by certain Newcastle United fans, it's maybe down to the fact that it was one of the most entertaining teams we've ever seen, and his defensive part in that, is often not remembered.
First of all, don't put words in my mouth and say I don't like John Beresford.
I didn't say you didn't like him.
There is only one former Newcastle player that I utterly despise, and that is Michael Owen. Everyone else are brilliant.
Whoa! I didn't say you didn't like him. I said you weren't impressed by him.
I wouldn't go that far either.
All right. What would you say about John Beresford's time at Newcastle United, and why isn't he in your list?
How do you know he's not in my list? Are you trying to say we pre-plan these things?
I'm saying we had a little natter about John Beresford before we pressed record.
I just said he narrowly missed out. One of my favourite left backs of all time doesn't make my top 3 either because we got him too late, and that's Stuart Pearce. I wish we got him sooner. His penalty against Spain is still one of my top 10 moments in all of football. Yes, John Beresford. Yeah, good, solid player. It's going to be incredibly difficult when you've got Ginola in front of you, but it was the same with Olivier Bernard and Laurent Robert and the likes of Dummett and Richie or whatever who was ever left playing back behind St Maximin, and Dan Burn to an extent more modernly. But yeah, he had a wonderful left foot, John Beresford, didn't he? And a couple of them free kicks he scored were absolute worldies. Yeah, I always remember the time he got, was it Aston Villa? I think it was Aston Villa. He got hooked by Keegan for gobbing off, and Robbie Elliott got put on. I always used to quite like Robbie Elliott. Again, not made my list, but I used to quite like Robbie Elliott back in the day. And if I was building my own kind of team as a kid, you do your predicted lineups and whatnot, and who's your strongest team. For some reason, I always used to put Robbie Elliott there. But yeah, it's not a slant on Bez whatsoever. He was brilliant, and he's again one of these guys like Warren Barton on the other flank, like Rob Lee, not from the area, but they just instantly got it. And they're always in and around the club now, aren't they? And I know you see Beresford quite a lot. So you had to put your bestie in there. And, it's not like he doesn't deserve it. He was in, the most famous Newcastle side, or one of the most famous Newcastle sides of all time.
I think he would fit into a modern day Premier League side. I think he had plenty of running power about him. He could.
I think Lewis Hall has a bit of the Beresford about him.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that. Yeah, definitely. I think he had all the attributes of a modern day fullback today, and that necessarily doesn't always carry over. I mean, no doubt we'll talk about one left back in a wee while who just would not be suited to today's game at all. But I think John Beresford definitely would be. And like we say, he played in some massive games, and I think we spoke about it last week when we mentioned Tino's header against Barcelona, and Beresford looking over and saying, I'm glad I'm not against Gillespie this week. And he played in that Manchester United game, as I mentioned. He scored 2 against Dynamo Kiev in the Champions League. Yeah. And actually, there's a stat, and he always tells this story every time I see him with an audience. He always tells a story about statistically in the Champions League, he is a better goal scorer than the likes of Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. So there you go.
He loves it, doesn't he? Yeah, I mean that just goes to show you can manipulate stats and figures into really whatever you want them to be. But yeah, look, he was great for Newcastle, wasn't he? And yeah, just narrowly missed out on mine, very narrowly. But yeah, it's a tricky one. This is because again to narrow these down to three is so tough. But yeah, John Beresford, man, what a those goals against Kiev. We're so unlucky not to get through that group stage, but yeah, well, Celavi.
Just speaking about working with Ginola, Beresford was quoted many years ago saying with Ginola that there were games, especially away from home, when we had to carry him. It's well documented that he didn't track back too much, and that obviously meant that good old Bez had to work a little bit harder than maybe he would have liked. And yes, you are right. He was subbed off with 25 minutes on the clock against Aston Villa, and then did not play again that season because Keegan was that miffed with him. But Bez did apologise, but it didn't seem to have the desired
He
effect.
apologised on the pitch, and he
I
still
think
got
he
hooked.
realised, didn't he? One of those, I suppose, infamous moments, really. You would say, but yeah, I mean, a lovely chap as well. And this, I mean, doesn't matter how nice they are, it shouldn't really come into the way of thinking when we're picking players of
It
categories like
does.
this. But he's a lovely chap, and he absolutely loves the club as well. He's it's in his heart, Newcastle United, and he always has time for everyone for photographs and autographs, which is lovely to see. And yeah, just when I think about the entertainers, he's one of those players that I do think about. I know many people will often think about the attackers, but for me, I always enjoyed watching Bez play. I thought he was a solid and important part of that team.
Yeah, second half going down the hill. Loved it, didn't he? And speaking of the stats and figures, like you can kind of massage your stats and figures to kind of do whatever. Obviously, David Ginola, one of the best loved Newcastle players of the 90s. I mean, his goal record for us wasn't all that great at all. It was a bit disappointing, if anything. But doesn't make a difference. Those stats and whatever. He's always going to be a bit of a legend, Ginola, isn't he?
Yeah, no, indeed. Great partnership down the flank with those two. Who's on your list then?
Starting strong, and to be honest, I'll be amazed if you've not picked this chap as well, Frank Clark.
Yep, he's on my list. He is.
Well, then we'll collab. We'll collaborate and listen for this one then. Simply, obviously, before my time, but 13 years, I think it was, at Newcastle. Trophy winning left back. How could you possibly leave him out? Surely it's just the most obvious one of the lot, no?
No, indeed. 457 appearances, so he's fourth on the
Incredible.
all-time list of appearance holders at Newcastle United. Local lad, ball and rolling skill, just down the road from me. And yeah, you're right. He joined in 62, left in 75, where the club criminally kicked him to the curb. No one could quite believe that the club wouldn't offer him a new deal. Apparently, he was too old. And what did he do? He went off to join Nottingham Forest and the Brian Clough, won the league and won the European Cup. So not a bad way to see out your career when you've been told you're too old.
Incredible. I think that would Alan Kennedy have something to do with that, perhaps, because we had him coming through it right around that time. If I was going to say if memory serves them, but again, I wasn't around, so it's not my memory at all. I'm sure Alan Kennedy, the left back, obviously went on to play and win European Cups with Liverpool. There must be something about our left backs around that time. I'm sure he came through around about the. I'm sure I've got an old VHS of it of Kennedy playing in the '74 Cup final. So that may have had something to do with it. But yeah, you don't play that many games for Newcastle United without being an absolute legend and good at what you do as well. So yeah, this one for me was the most obvious one of the lot, despite obviously not being alive to see him play.
Yeah, and it's funny when you read back on him. I mean, John Gibson absolutely loves him. He actually, in a video that we did earlier in the week talking about Lewis Hall, said he hopes that Lewis Hall can be the Frank Clark of his generation, because of the time and length he stayed at Newcastle United, but also the talent and also the things that they achieved, i.e. winning the European Fairs Cup, which is a tremendous target to place on Lewis Hall. Joe Harvey, obviously Newcastle United legend, cup-winning captain and then cup-winning manager, said, "I've never seen a winger give Clark a roasting twice. This lad has the lot. Pace, judgment, a strong tackle, and a sharp mind. He outthinks other players," which is good because his style wasn't always appreciated by fans, according to some of the research that I've done. He was criticised by some for being too slow and too laid back. But as Joe Harvey said there, if you beat him once, you're not beating him twice, because he just gets switched on. And those who did beat him the first time were in a rarity.
Fickle football fans criticising a player that's doing all right. I won't have that said. Dan Burn, anyone? But yeah, look, it's just a no-brainer. As I say, this one, it's the sheer amount of appearances, and during that time winning a trophy as well, which we haven't done since. And to have those quotes that you've just read out there by arguably the biggest Newcastle United legend of them all, it's an absolute no-brainer. And for if we were ranking these, he'd be number one, surely.
No, indeed. And you've got to think about it as well. At the time he played, Joe Harvey built 3 real successful teams, and he was in all of them. He built the side that went up to the first division, and Frank Clark was part of that. He built the side that won the Fairs Cup, and then he built the side that got to the FA Cup against Liverpool. Yeah, that would be right. Yeah, so 3 really good sides to watch. 3 sides, or at least 2 of them, you could argue the latter 2 that should have won more and didn't. They're quite steady in the top flight without actually doing too much. Obviously, one won the Fairs Cup, the other one got to a cup final, but Frank Clark was key to each of them, which says all you need to know.
Yeah, and then, like you say, which we kind of glanced over a bit too freely, so just to bring it back, to then go on and have a renaissance in your career and play for one of the most famous sides in football history, in that Nottingham Forest team, is incredible. Absolutely incredible. What a career. Just immense.
Yeah, and again, it speaks volumes about the manager who then picked you up at your lowest point and said, don't listen to them. I know how good you are. I mean, Cloughie is one of the greatest managers this game has ever seen, and he put his faith into Frank Clark, who'd just been told is over the hill, and he goes on, like you say, to win the league, the European Cup, and the League Cup twice. I mean, again, if you're looking for references from the game's best, Joe Harvey, Brian Clough, I mean, you don't get really 2 bigger names than that.
I mean, yeah, some
Frank
quotes
Clark.
off them pair would look good on your LinkedIn, wouldn't it? Incredible.
It would.
Yeah, fantastic. But yeah, what a legend.
And of course, partnered with David Craig at right back. So, you had Bez, you had Warren Barton, you've got Tino Livramento, you've got Lewis Hall, and back in the 70s and late 60s, you had David Craig and Frank Clark, who, if we're doing right backs at some point, I'm sure David Craig might get a look in. I mean, just to go back on the points, he went on to play 117 times for Nottingham Forest. He went on to play for 4 years at Forest after being told he was too old to play for Newcastle United.
Yeah, have that. Kind of a bit like Gary Speed, wasn't it? When Sir Bobby kind of reluctantly let him go because he was getting on a bit. Absolutely phenomenal player for Bolton, and then went on to Sheffield United as well before he retired too. So yeah, just age is but a number. So just not everyone is the same. Some can go on for a bit longer than others.
And wouldn't it be tremendous if Lewis Hall, managed to go anywhere near Frank Clark's 457 appearances for Newcastle United? I mean, we don't see it anymore, do we? We don't see many players staying at one club for their career. I mean, even Harry Kane left his his team Spurs. I mean, Marcus Rashford, okay, has been at Manchester United for a long while and probably won't go anywhere else until maybe he gets to his mid-30s and he might go and get one last big paycheck somewhere. But they are the exceptions. You don't see people staying, for a long time, do you?
No, especially now in the world of loans, when you're banded around from pillar to post, when you're just breaking through the youth teams and whatnot. I mean, like you mentioned, Kane there. How many teams did he go out on loan to before he broke into the Spurs 11? So, yeah, a rarity for sure.
Right. As you've stolen my second pick, I'll have to go with my third pick then.
Okay.
And it was difficult because you try to think what you want from a left back, and also about how much time players spent there, as we've mentioned. I mean, I thought David Santon was a decent left back. It's a
Liked him.
shame that he left. I was good when he left. Patrick van Aanholt, I know he was only on loan, but I was impressed by him. I think he could have done a job a bit longer at Newcastle United. I can see you turn your face up, but he was a decent enough left back and had a decent enough career. Do you know what? I've just thought of someone else actually, but
I might have gone for them. So let's just.
well,
I've got two more left. Yeah, remember.
do you know what? It's funny because it goes back. You have got to. It goes back to a category we did a few weeks ago where it was we wish we'd seen more of them, or we wish they'd stayed longer. And me and Aaron on the Monday show, so the day after this comes out, we're going to pick a starting 11 each on the players we wish had stayed longer at Newcastle United. And
good to know you're taking an idea of ours and running with it elsewhere.
No, we've had this idea for months. We've just
Okay.
not been able to do it. Don't worry.
Yeah,
I mean,
no,
I
it's
will
fine.
credit you in the credit. So
No, I don't feel left out. It's fine.
Jethro Willems might come into the conversation,
Yeah.
but I think for the generation I grew up really starting to really watch Newcastle United, it's hard to look past Ollie Bernard. And you might, it's not necessarily on talent or ability. I mean, he was good. Was he better than Beresford? You would argue probably not. Was he better than Frank Clark? Hard to say. I've never seen Frank Clark in person. Everything I'm saying about him is passed down. But Ollie Bernard, I think, was a good, capable left back who could get forward, who really complimented Lauren Robert well, had that difficult challenge like Bez did with Ginola about, picking up the defensive responsibilities of Lauren Robert. But if Robert did it going forward, Bernard just had to shut up and do it. For me, Bernard, yeah, he's probably, other than Lewis Hall, the last consistently good left back for me. Joined from Lyon on free transfer, 102 appearances, played for 5 years, mainly under Sir Bobby Robertson. Graham Souness came in and kicked him out. He then returned after a couple of clubs, but never actually pulled the black and white shirt on again. But I always enjoyed watching Bernard. Him and Robert, especially down the left, were always a joy to watch.
Yeah, I think he was brought in originally as like a left winger as well, wasn't he? He certainly at Lyon played further forward. I mean, I've been fortunate enough. I've met Ollie a few times. Love his pub in Blythe, the Mason's Arms. Yeah, lovely Guinness. But yeah, Ollie's great, all round good dude, and yeah, he was again part of a like we are of the same generation that was our teenage years, and he was always good fun, and he had his moments, scored some goals, and yeah, got a smack in the face for his trouble. And I don't think it was the right time to let him go when we did. Ollie tells the story on my podcast, which, by the way, not enough of you are going over and listening to. By the way, I've seen the figures. You need to go over to the Greenwood and Mulliner show and start listening, because we have amazing interviews and content on there. I've digressed, but yeah, tells the story about how he was let go of Newcastle, which is obviously awful, and you know what Souness was like. But yeah, to be replaced by someone of just not anywhere near as capable was a bit of a sickener, really. And my God, Babiaro was getting nowhere near this list.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because Babiaro was always on the radar of Sir Bobby Robson. Like, he was one of those that he always wanted to sign, and then he eventually arrived at Newcastle United, well past his sell-by date, unfortunately. But yeah, what can he was so crucial, Bernard, to that successful period that Sir Bobby had. He was a good trainer, listened to the instructions clearly. I think Robson really respected him, and him and Robert had the perfect partnership down the left. They meet up regularly. They talk mostly about that ball in the face that Laurent Robert put or planted into Bernard's face from close distance and knocked Bernard out. And I know Bernard gets asked about that everywhere he goes. And he's not sick of it, though, because, it means he's remembered. I'm sure you would be like to be asked about a hat-trick in a game or a cup win or something. But look, it's always nice to be asked a question about your career, even if it is a moment that you don't really remember.
There was one game against Everton, if you remember, where he was on the receipt of an absolutely...
Don't. Do you know what, right? Many people will know that I've got a bit of a side gig, and I get lucky enough to work with some Newcastle United legends, including Olivier Bernard. And you might think the first time that I met Olivier Bernard, the first question I'd want to ask him is about Laurent Robert kicking the ball in his face. But it wasn't. The first question I wanted to ask him in front of an audience was about that tackle that Thomas Gravesen laid on Olivier Bernard, because we always talk about sliding door moments and what could have been. That, for me, is the biggest sliding door moment. We talk about Sir Bobby and
But
Keegan.
you didn't put it in, you just take three.
You know what? I didn't. I don't know why, but you mentioned it and you reminded us of it, and it is literally the first thing I asked Olivier Bernard, was, I think Newcastle, and I have mentioned it before on pods actually, I think Newcastle United would have gone on to win the league had they won that game. And look at your face. I know.
That's a big show.
I know. But they were in control of that game. Bernard is wiped out. It should have been a foul. They go up to their end. Unsworth gets a penalty and scores it, and they lose the game. If Newcastle United had won that, I'm sure they were only 2 or 3 points off the top, and I think they were there in the ascendancy, and that just absolutely rocked them. Where was VAR? Disgraceful.
I can think of 2 more similar instances of that happening as well, but to not even and obviously Gravesen went on and got a move to Real Madrid. I mean, the guy's a complete psychopath, and it was just such a shocker of a tackle. It made you feel physically sick. The other ones I mentioned are Callum McManaman on Haidara, who again was such a promising left back and had a tremendous resurgence in his career as well. Almost very recently as well when he played for Nantes. Disgraceful challenges. And then you could have had it last Sunday in Forest as well with Ryan Yates, who could have easily got 2 red cards in that game. However, I don't know if you read my I was at work at the time when you were on with Aaron on Monday, but I did leave a comment on the show saying Yates not getting sent off may have been a blessing in disguise, because he stayed on the pitch and he's just such an abject footballer. It probably did us a favour that he was still on, because he's just so poor. But yeah, how are these challenges? All 3 were red cards, but weren't even given on field as a foul. It was play on all instances. It was incredible.
Yeah, unbelievable. And if I remember correctly, the referee was in an absolute fantastic position as well.
He was on Sunday.
Well, yeah, it's amazing how they get away with, how they're just not making the right decisions. But yeah, that moment. I'm going to just try and find the league table now, just to prove my point about where they were, because I remember watching that in the pub with my dad, and just feeling absolutely decimated that they
So this would have been 0102.
No, it was 2000. It was April the 6th, 2003.
Oh, we wouldn't have won the league. No, we were miles off.
Well,
I know we finished 3rd, and then the season before that we finished 4th.
Well, I mean, Newcastle were 6 points off the top on that day. Obviously, had they won, it would have gone down to 3. and they were just in the ascendancy. I think I remember correctly they were in good form. Someone might correct us later on, but I do think that obviously ended their title hopes.
Yeah.
But I still think, and I maintain this, that I think they would have won. Yeah, they would have won the title had they won that game. Maybe it's wishful thinking, but
We still we got spanked by Man United 6-2 as well, didn't we? So it was after going 1-0 up.
yeah.
But yeah, Olivier Bernard, good shout. But yeah, disgusting tackle. And Gravison got a move to Real Madrid.
But anyway, we forget Gravis. Let's focus on Olivier Bernard and why he deserves to be in this list. Tremendous character, tremendous player, partnership with Lovren Robert, got his head down, worked hard, embraced the challenge in front of him. Not an easy move coming from Lyon to Newcastle United, but just got on with it. And he really did form a key part of that squad that ended up going into the Champions League. So for me, I say it was a difficult one to pick a third choice. You know, David Santon could have been in it, maybe Paul Dummett for some. But Bernard, I think Bernard was the first person that came into my mind. But then when I went to write the list, he was probably the one where I was just looking around and thinking, have I missed anyone out?
Because it's probably the one you've seen the most.
Yeah. Of a decent level, because like I say, Babiaro, not happening. I mean, really, we should be talking about how good Matt Target is, but it's just not happened.
Why?
Because a fit Matt Target is a good, solid left back. He really should have achieved more in his career.
Go back to when he, at the end of that survival season when Target was doing well, and I was adamant the deal should not be made permanent because it's just a waste of time, and that's how it's turned out. He was a good loan signing, same as Jetro Willems and whatever. He should never have been made a permanent deal ever.
Well, let us know in the comments what you think. Come on, then. What have you got left?
So you've done all three of yours now, and I've still got two more.
I'll just sit back and relax now, and then just jump in and criticize you when you say something stupid.
Well, you are gonna criticize, and I might get pelters for this because I did on my podcast a couple of years ago with Johnny. We did.
Sorry, what's your podcast called?
The Greenwood and Mulliner Show on Newcastle Fans TV.
Come on, then. Who have you interviewed now?
No. This wasn't an interview scenario. Although we have just interviewed Sum 41 guitarist Dave Brownsound, who is the most charming and handsome man in rock and roll. Yeah, good guy. Sorry, I brown sounded out then. I think I'm in love with him. I'm not sure. Anyway, but right, I got pelters for this when me and Johnny did our ultimate Newcastle United teams because I put this guy in at left back, and he wasn't predominantly a left back. However, a couple of days ago was the anniversary, or like you always see these games. Oh, it's been so many years since this game or whatever, and it was the Feyenoord Newcastle 3-2 in Rotterdam. Bellamy, it's in. John Champion brilliantly. And who played left back that night? Andrew Musgrove.
I'm trying to wrap my brains now. That's a difficult question.
A utility man. Someone who is so solid across all positions in the back line.
You said that. That just sounds like you're describing our news.
You are absolutely correct.
Okay. So yeah, I can see why you think you might have blurred the lines here, because I would argue he's not a left back. But that being said, if you play left back in one of the greatest ever games in the club's history, then you get
and this wasn't a rarity either. He played plenty of games at left back. This wasn't a one-off kind of thing. I mean, if you were to put Dan Burn in this, and I wouldn't argue with you, by the way, were you to do that, it's a kind of similar position. Yes, Dan Burn is predominantly a centre back. Yes, Aaron Hughes was predominantly a centre back, but played plenty of games at left back. Aaron Hughes just ultra model of consistency, never putting a foot wrong. We were talking about that with the kind of Paul Dummett to this world earlier, weren't we? Hughes was a level above, and he goes down as one of the most underrated players in Newcastle history, maybe even in Premier League history, because he was spot on. You could stick him left back, right back, centre back, whatever. He had a fantastic career. Super, super fit because he, played till he's well into his 40s. And yeah, just solid. Can you ever think of a big mistake Aaron Hughes ever made?
I think there was one. I couldn't tell you what it
Oh,
is.
stop being a
No,
clever
I
dick.
can't tell you what it is, but there is something going
Exactly.
off in the back of my head, and I'm sure someone in the comments will remind me of it. But no, on the whole, like you say, just a man who had that versatility. And it's funny, isn't it? Because you talk about him, you talk about Gary Speed. These players went on for forever, didn't they? Like Aaron Hughes, Gary Speed. We probably say that now about Ashley Young and James Milner, but they probably didn't hold the same level as someone like Hughes and Speed did for so long at an age where you expect them to hang up their boots and enjoy their retirement. I mean, Aaron Hughes, 455 appearances in the Premier League.
Incredible.
Yeah, I think he went to Fulham afterwards, didn't he?
I think he had a stint at Aston Villa too.
Yeah, Fulham. He played 250 times for Fulham after leaving Newcastle.
Got
64
to a
times.
Europa League final
Well,
with Fulham.
yeah, you're speaking about him playing at left back. I've got the stat here of how many times he played left back, not for Newcastle, but in his whole career. So he played 54 times in his whole career at left back. Let me see if I can break it down further.
That's enough,
Just
isn't it?
give you a. All right, here we go. So is this left back? So at left back, he played. Looks like, did he play all? What year did he leave? He left in 2005. He left in 2005,
I
2004.
think this was another Souness era.
Departure. So 99, 2000 played 11 times at left back. 2000, 2003 played 15 times at left back. He played 5 times at left back in the Champions League in that same season.
Well, there you go.
And then a couple of times after that, in his final years at Newcastle, he played left back. So yeah, 2002.
That confirms he's a valid selection then, yes?
2002, 2003, he played at left back 15 times, which means I might have to do a bit of research about Olivier Bernard. Was he injured? Was he out of favour? I don't know. Someone tell me where Olivier Bernard was on that time.
Hey, we had a European campaign, my friend. It's squad rotation. Use your squad.
Yeah, that's what the best managers do. But yeah, Aaron Hughes, I mean, I remember being particularly mad when he got sold, actually.
Oh, fuming. The Souness he has a lot to answer for. I'd love to get him on my podcast, but he just won't ever happen. Big Dunk is still number one for me. I'd love Big Dunk. I mean, it'd have to be via online, because if it was face to face, I would be terrified. But Souness has a lot to answer for, selling some really top players well before they should have departed. But yeah, Hughes was such an underrated player, and just at a time where, through that Sababi era, you'd probably say, I mean, you mentioned that incident between Gravison and Bernard potentially costing us a league title. We were probably a world-class centre-back away from winning the title. Obviously, before Woodgate signed, and, one that could actually play more than, so many times without getting injured. But, yeah.
I got the clubs mixed around there. He actually left Newcastle and joined Aston Villa.
Yeah,
Then he went
to
to Fulham.
Yeah.
Do you know how much he joined Villa for?
Oh, it was pence in relative terms. It was like 2 million.
It was £1 million. So he was born in 1979. He left Newcastle in 2005. So quickly do the maths. 89, 99. What are we looking at? So what was he? 26?
Yeah,
Is that
don't.
right?
So yeah, entering his peak years, brilliant. Well done, Suey.
Oh my God, I didn't even realise that might be the worst sale ever, potentially.
Yeah.
It's so unbelievable.
We are perennial, and this is the whole thing about modern day PSR as well. Go back through the history books. We are shocking at selling. Absolutely disgracefully bad at selling players.
£1 million. Goodness me.
I mean, in relative terms, yes, Woodgate came in for 9 and was sold for 13. Obviously, Woodgate a bit better, but a lot more injury prone. But yeah, I think we bought Titus Bramble for 5, didn't we? How much did we pay for Boomsong? 8.
Yeah. Less said about that.
And Aaron Hughes. Aaron Hughes is a better player than the pair of them.
Aaron Hughes, he played at the New Camp in 1997 as a teenager.
Yes, he did.
For Newcastle, that was his debut. Obviously, he played for Northern Ireland, and he went on for very, very long time.
You go to Hearts.
He did, yeah. I can't get over that.
Over 100 appearances for Northern Ireland, wasn't it?
Yeah. Tremendous player. Oh my God! I really wish I hadn't Googled that and found that. I was mad. I was mad when it happened. And that probably confirms why I was mad. £1 million at the age of 25, 26 after all that. Goodness me.
For a player that's played in the Champions League, experienced at international level and can play anywhere across the back line and do one heck of a job.
Graham Souness. It's funny, Graham Souness, tremendous player for Liverpool, by the way. Brilliant. Imagine him as a midfield player,
but yeah, fine, whatever. Achieved a lot as a manager as well, but was just completely the wrong appointment.
I mean, I remember Newcastle beating Blackburn on the day he was in the director's box due to become Newcastle United manager. I was at St James Park that day. I like him as a pundit, I think he says all the right things. He's not afraid to hold back. I actually think he's a good pundit, but it's just scarred by the fact he did such a horrendous job at Newcastle United. Oh, mate, come on. Get me out of this mood now. I found that out about Hughes' price tag, please.
So, ones that narrowly missed out, Stuart Pearce, just because we had him at the wrong time and we had him at the end of his career, but one of England's greatest.
Did he join? Was he Kenny Dalglish signed him alongside Barnes and Rush?
Yes.
Okay, it was okay.
But if you think, you see him in Euro '96 and he was still class. We only got him a year later. So it's not. I was a big Stuart Pearce fan, but yeah, not. We just got him at the wrong time. It is what it is. Dan Burn did enter my calculations. He really did, and I never understood this criticism of a guy who, yes, played a few times there for Brighton, well, more than a few times. Kept Saka quiet at the Emirates, kept Dembele quiet, who, yes, I don't think much of, but still there's that pace element that he had against Burn. And at the end of the day, he was left back for a side that finished 4th in the Premier League, breaking that mould of the cartel clubs or whatever you want to call them. And he was there for the Champions League campaign as well, in the midst of one hell of an injury crisis. So he deserved an honourable mention. Who else was there? Didier Domi. Like him as a pundit, but good on him. But yeah, not for me. Jetro Willems was great. Just a shame he got that injury. That's such a shame. And then what has he done since? Nothing. He hasn't. He was probably playing the best football of his career for Newcastle, and he just hasn't gone on and replicated. You don't really hear about what he's doing anymore. And then we had Danny Rose, of course, who again was another one who we had at the wrong time.
I have just remembered somebody who didn't come into my way of thinking, but now I've just seen his name. But now I've just seen his name. I'm like, how have I missed him out?
Go on.
Potentially. Well, I need to know who you've got here.
It won't be the one. It won't be, I'll guarantee you.
I mean, we'll just have a quick mention for Frank Hudspeth, obviously well before anyone's time that's listening to this podcast. 1910 to 1929. Alf McMichael is another one of an older generation. You've mentioned Alan Kennedy there.
Yeah.
Who was he, Enrique?
Yeah. I thought you would have chosen him. I'm not a huge...
I forgot. I'll be honest. I forgot about him, and now I have remembered him. He'd push Bernard close in terms of ability, because I think I've done him a total disservice, to be quite honest with you. I think he actually, when I'm talking about the last good left back we had, he's probably up there in that conversation.
Yeah,
I thought he was tremendous, great in the Championship, and then he kind of came into his own, and then he was, he got his move to Liverpool. The exit, killed whatever kind of legacy he had at Newcastle, I think.
which is
The way
why
he
he's
went
not in
about it.
mine. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, he's been on our channel. I didn't interview him. Johnny did. Great, but he turned into freaking Mr. Liverpool, which is kind of why I don't have the same kind of fondness for Andy Cole as well. Obviously, an amazing player for us, like such a talent, but he's Mr. Man United. He don't give a crap
Yeah.
about Newcastle. And neither did Enrique till the takeover. So that's why, yeah, he was fine. He was great. I don't think he was anything overly special. It was probably because it was surrounded by sort of bang averageness before then. And David Santon was one I really liked. I can't understand why we got rid of him when we did. I thought he was brilliant, two-footed player, could cut inside, really, really talented, I thought. And I thought it was a huge, huge mistake. But I'm going bold, and I am taking Lewis Hall.
Boom! I thought you might do. I got really excited there. I thought you might do. I thought, do you know what? When we started this episode, I thought, do we just have to give like him an honorary pass, and then we'll pick 6 and then Lewis Hall, because he's been done so well this season.
I
But
am
he's just getting in
taking,
anyway.
yeah, I know I'm taking him because, and this is a bit of a forefront. And yes, this might be one that leaves me with egg on the face in the future if he doesn't progress how I think he's going to. But what I think he's going to do is be England's long-term established left back. I think he's going to be Newcastle United's long-term established left back. I love the way he's had a bit of trial and tribulation since he joined, because I think it was the right thing to do to leave him out when Howe did last season. I thought it was I remember being in Dortmund. He had an absolute shocker. He was hooked at half time. It was terrible. But
But do you say that now, looking how it's all panned out? If I take
yeah, of
you back
course.
to last season and some of the games Dan Burn had where he got turned inside out, would the Sam of last year say the same? Was there no point
Yes.
last season where you were calling for him to be introduced?
Uh,
Oh, yeah, we
hmm,
go.
I honestly can't remember, because when you do your post-match videos, your emotions are heightened, and your opinions are slightly masked, aren't they, between like 24 hours later after the game, where you've kind of had time to kind of analyze again. But no, I thought I'm pretty sure I was fairly consistent throughout and say, look, he's a young man learning his trade still. Yes, he broke through. I remember when he broke through at Chelsea. I watched a League Cup game when they played Man City, and he was the best Chelsea player on the pitch by an absolute country mile. And he was kept in their side, played against us, did all right, and I thought he was one hell of a talent. Complete shock that we signed him. Complete shock. It came out of nowhere. I thought, and as well, I thought it was an incredible piece of business. Yes, 28 million looks a bit steep. I get it. But what he was, for essentially, still a child, but with some now decent, lofty experience behind him. Yeah, I thought it was an incredible piece of business, but it was kind of one step back for 2 steps forward, which is what's happened. He hasn't had it all his own way. He had developing. He had to develop areas of his game through the help of the coaching staff there at Newcastle, Howe, Tyndall, Jones, et al. And he's flourishing. He's absolutely flourishing. I can't imagine that he wasn't frustrated at times last season, but when he'd been there long enough to kind of get his head down, work hard, know what's expected of him. Yes, there's being fit, but then, as we've seen players say, there's being fit, but then there's being Eddie Howe fit, which he wasn't. End of last season, he hasn't looked back, and now look at him go. It was totally right that he was called up to the England squad. I hope Thomas Tuchel continues that trend. I don't think there's much between him and Luke Shaw now. And if Lewis Hall can stay fit and continue his upward trajectory, because he's still 20 years of age. he's got plenty more improvement to go. And how high is his ceiling? So yeah, boiled Newcastle fan. His brother is a striker in the non-league who we've had on the Greenwood and Mullen show before. Connor made headlines a couple of years ago actually for Chorley in the FA Cup. So yeah, we didn't even mention we didn't even know of his brother then. That's how quickly his kind of rise to prominence has been. But yeah, incredible story. So yeah, and I hope he's successful for many years to come. And he's got a goal in a win at Old Trafford. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I'm glad you've got him on your list. I'm not going to speak too much about him because me and Gibbo did an hour's podcast earlier in the week about Lewis Hall, so I don't want to.
Well, yeah, and again, what Gibbo hasn't seen in Newcastle United history isn't worth hearing about. The man's seen it all. He's an absolute fountain of knowledge, and what Gibbo said about Lewis Hall in that pod. I don't want to go and give spoilers because you got to go and listen to it. So, as for me, more than justified his place in my three.
No, certainly so. And like I said, I'm glad he's on your list. I also just want to say that it feels like Sam, that you are our Boris Johnson of this podcast, trying to push his book. Did you see the coverage of the American elections
Can
and
I
every
just
other
stop
thing was
you
about his book?
there? If you ever compare me to Boris Johnson again, me and you are going to have a serious fallout.
And what's the name of your podcast?
It doesn't matter now, does it?
Oh, I've hurt his feelings. I'm sorry. I should have not have done that. I do apologize.
I nearly swore then.
Yes.
But yes,
Nobody wants to be compared to Boris Johnson.
It's quite right. You have apologised.
Yes. I can see that you look visibly angry and upset.
You know them charity boxing matches?
Is that what you want now?
Well, one was very close to being formed just then, and I am twice your size.
Yes, but I've got the speed.
Yeah, you run marathons. I was all power.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
you can't run away in a 8x8.
Yeah, in a squared circle. Right. Well, that was left backs as chosen by me and Sam. Sam's.
I don't want to end on a note of threats of physical violence.
No, that's fine. It's fine. It's all in good nature, isn't it?
Yeah, I did see said election coverage, and Emily Maitlis, you are not.
Yes, thank you for that. I can only aspire to be. I once served her in M&S in Sheffield. She bought a pack of biscuits.
Well, the journalistic prowess did not rub off.
No, I mean, at that time I was far from the job I am in now. Hence the reason I was selling.
Well, clearly, you're in M&S.
Do you know the story I always tell about that? Just quickly, just to finish off on a light mood. I actually, before I started working there, I went into that store because it's the M&S on the street where all the students live, and I was buying some milk, and there was a pack of biscuits. You know how they have the kind of the for sale kind of stuff that they need to get rid of because the date's coming up. I was at the end of the till, and I said, "Oh, do you want some biscuits to go with your milk?" And I said, "No, I'm all right, thank you, just the milk." She goes, "Oh, is that a Geordie accent?" I said, "Yeah, it is. Yeah, from Newcastle." She goes, "Well, you know who would buy these biscuits?" I thought, "Oh, yeah, I would go. Ant and Dec would buy these biscuits." I just could not believe that was their sales pitch. Fair to say, I did not buy the biscuits, and I don't think Ant and Dec would buy the biscuits, but that was her genuine sales pitch to try and get me to buy some near out-of-date biscuits.
Good.
So there you go.
Good.
I thought that would get a better reaction. No. Anyway, I like the story.
Yeah, just get in the comments and sign up to NORD VPN. Link in the description.
Just round off then quickly about the three you've chosen. Then your left backs:
Frank Clark, Lewis Hall, and Aaron Hughes.
I've gone for Frank Clark, John Beresford, and Olivier Bernard, although I did forget about Jose Enrique, but I'm sticking with Bernard because he loves Newcastle United, and Jose Enrique sold his soul, and it's all about Liverpool. So there you go. I hope you guys have enjoyed it. Get into the comments. Let us know your favourite left backs. Have we missed anyone out? Have we ranked someone a little bit higher than maybe you would do? Would you buy biscuits from M&S just because Ant and Dec would buy them? Let us know. Have you met any famous journalists as well? And have you listened to Sam's podcast, which is
the Greenwood and Mullen show on Newcastle Fans? Just type in Newcastle Fans TV on whatever.
There we go. An hour's worth of beautiful Newcastle United content. And I hope you have enjoyed it. Do hit that link to the NordVPN subscription. Do give the video a thumbs up and do get into the comments, and we will reply to each and every one of you. Thank you very much. And for myself and Sam, we will see you guys next week.